Okay, there we go. So in 2011, this movie came out, and I have it as part of my Movie Watcher's Guide to Enlightenment because I think it just draws you in and it takes you into a deeper awareness of consciousness not really being located in a person or in time and space, because we all have heard about consciousness, and across many, many spiritualities, consciousness is described and defined in many ways. With A Course in Miracles, I think that was one of the first ones where I ever heard it described. Jesus calls it, consciousness is the domain of the ego. And it's like, wow, that usually is associated more with spirit, but he's teaching us that the first split in the mind, the separation from God, is what generated consciousness. So it's kind of analogous to the split mind, and it has levels, and most of us, we talked about that in the 60s, raising your consciousness. Consciousness has levels, whereas spirit is just pure love, pure oneness. Consciousness is the domain of the ego. So even a lot of spiritualities that talk about Christ consciousness, if Christ is a pure idea in the mind of God, right? Father and I are one, just pure spirit, then consciousness is kind of going to be our ladder that we need to approach spirit with. He's teaching us that the mind, he says, is the activating agent of spirit. So we might say, just like they said in the 60s, we're here to raise our consciousness. We're here to approach absolute spirit, pure love, pure oneness. And this movie is very helpful for that, because when we think of consciousness, some people say, well, there's a cellular consciousness in the cells of the body, or each person has their own consciousness, or their own higher self. Sometimes the soul is described as an individual soul. It's on its journey back to eternal life and oneness. But consciousness, Jesus says, is the domain of the ego, and it can be trained. And so when Jesus is giving us his mind training in the workbook of A Course in Miracles, it's really in the realm of consciousness. We tend to think of learning more in terms of humans. We grow, we have human development, we go to school, we go through different levels of education, kindergarten, and then grade school, junior high, high school, depending on the country and the culture, and then there's university level and graduate level and so on and so forth. But that's all kind of in the realm of with humans, but I'm going to talk more about the mind and activating the mind and opening to a purification of the mind and the heart. And this movie, I think, is one of the best movies because it takes you into the story, and then the more you go into the story, we'll pause it from time to time, because there's these huge insights that are available when we go through this movie, where the main character is questioning who he is, where he is, what exactly is going on. And I think most of us have gone through that too. Who am I? Where am I? And what is going on, really, with this whole spiritual journey? A lot of times we have these questions. So I want to start off with a real basic thing from the Course, where Jesus is teaching us that he says, as a mind, you either extend or you project. And he says there's really no other options. When you believe in a split from God, in heaven it's just pure love extending love. There is no projection. But in this world we tend to think of projection, we hear it from psychiatrists and psychotherapists saying, stop projecting onto your husband, stop projecting onto your wife, as if people are projecting onto each other. But what Jesus is saying is actually how this world seemed to arise The scientists say there was a big bang, but Jesus is actually saying that this world comes from projection. He says projection makes perception, and everything we perceive with our five senses is perception. And we're being taught that when we're asleep and dreaming and our mind hasn't been purified yet from the Holy Spirit and Jesus, then we're dealing with fragmented perception. We're perceiving separate people, places, things, objects. If we look at the galaxies, we're perceiving different galaxies, different solar systems. You know, we've got quasars, we've got black holes. You know, basically through astronomy, we've got a whole system of separation going on through time and space. And then just on planet Earth, if we look around, you know how they say variety is the spice of life. We've got a lot of variety. James just gave me a tour, and of all the casitas and all the colors, this is really lit up here. This is really colorful. Yay, Mexico. I love it, you know. I've been down here too for quite a few years and just enjoying all the colors. But what Jesus is teaching us is he's teaching us that this fragmented perception is not really seeing. We think we see through the body's eyes and we hear through the body's ears. We smell, we taste, we touch, the five senses. But through a lot of near-death experiences, a lot of us have read a lot of near-death experience literature over the decades, and sometimes people will talk about leaving their body, or even they're called out-of-body experiences, where they kind of, one minute they're relaxing and on a summer day, and the next minute they're in the corner of the room, and they're smelling, tasting, they can see everything that's happening with their body, but they're outside of their body. And if you just stop for a minute with that one thing, it's like they're seeing from the corner of the room, but they don't have any eyeballs up there. They're hearing the sounds in the room, but they don't have any ears up there in the corner of the room. That one thing we can learn is that the five senses, we associate our perception of the world, are actually part of consciousness and not part of the body. If you can still see, smell, taste, touch on the operating room, out-of-body experience, and they can hear the jokes that the surgeons are making while they're cutting their chest open. Then they come back and they go, yeah, I heard that joke, you know, right in the middle of my open heart surgery. You guys can you focus a little more on the patient at hand next time? But what that's teaching us is that consciousness is not even limited to the five senses, and that consciousness is not really in the body, because if you can observe all that from outside the body, then the body must be some kind of a projection, a tool, an image, where we think that biological life resides. We think biological life is in the body. We believe in this fragmented, separated state that the body is our home now, and we take care of it. We try to take care of it. Sometimes it's not so easy. When you seem to go into addictions and things, it seems like a pretty hard job at some point. But I could say that we're either extending or projecting all the time, and what Jesus is teaching us with consciousness, it does involve projection, because ideas are either purely of God and they're just love extending love, or they're projected out and they do take form. And so when we look at the forms of this world, we can say that they are projections. It's lesson number 2 from the workbook of A Course in Miracles. I've given everything I see all the meaning that it has for me. That's after number 1, nothing I see means anything. So he's going to teach us that the way we're seeing the world in a fragmented way is not accurate, it's very distorted, and the mind is in a very deluded, deceived state. I thought also I would just set up projection with just a quote from Jesus, to really emphasize that our lesson we're going through, forgiveness, is really not between people, it's actually in our mind. He says, projection makes perception. The world you see is what you gave it, nothing more than that. But though it is no more than that, it is not less. Therefore to you it is important. It is the witness to your state of mind, the outside picture of an inward condition. As a man thinketh, so does he perceive. Therefore seek not to change the world, but choose to change your mind about the world. So that's kind of a key thing, because when we're believing in the ego, we're always trying to change the world. We're trying to change the world every day. We're trying to change the person we believe we are. We're trying to change the world conditions. We're trying to change every day. We have really tens and hundreds of things we try to change in the world. And he's like saying, it's like when they first invented television and Milton Berle came on, and they were doing the first television broadcast after they invented the television, and sometimes when they would have broadcasting difficulties, that it would get very skewed on the television set, and people would go up and start banging on the set and turning the knobs, and the announcer would quickly have to come on and say, do not touch your television set. The problem is not in the set. In other words, they were having broadcasting difficulties, but nobody had ever knew anything about broadcasting difficulties, so they were just, of course, turning all the knobs and moving the antennas and thinking, what am I doing wrong? And then the announcer goes, no, the problem is not in your set. And Jesus is teaching us, it's a very deep lesson actually, that the problem is not in the world you see. The problem is the way that you're looking at the world, through the ego's lens, the fragmenting aspect. It's like wearing dark sunglasses every day, and you don't let the light in. You don't see the colors so vibrantly. You don't see anything clearly because it's fragmented perception. So he goes on to say, perception is a result and not a cause, and that is why order of difficulty in miracles is meaningless. Everything looked upon with Christ's vision is healed and holy. Nothing perceived without it means anything. And where there is no meaning, there is chaos. So he's giving us a good, like a teaching, why we perceive a chaotic world. It's not a creation of God. God is love and light, is pure love and light. But this ego distortion is like this dark filter that we're just looking through the filter, imagining that our problems are external to our mind, in all these people we don't agree with, these politicians we don't agree with, these soldiers or these military officers. We seem to have a lot of opinions of what's wrong with the world. And then Jesus is just saying, come back with me. That's what I love about this movie, is that we're going to be taken into the main character, Captain Coulter, and he feels like he's being used in some kind of military experiment, but he's very disoriented, and he seems to find himself initially on a train headed for downtown Chicago. And he has this beautiful 8-minute scenario with this beautiful woman that's sitting in the seat across from him, and she's talking to him in a very friendly way. She seems to know who he is. But as it goes on, he starts to recognize through these 8-minute scenes that he has on a train going into downtown Chicago, that he seems to be a different person than the one that she is talking to. He has a different name and a different appearance. His consciousness seems to be in another man named Sean. And he is really perplexed that she's calling him Sean, and he's like, I'm not Sean. And she's talking to him as if she knows him, and she takes this daily train every day with Sean, and he's not Sean. That would be a little disturbing for all of us, if somebody started just looking at us and calling us by another name, as if they knew us, and then they called us by a completely different name, and seemed to know us very well. it's almost like his consciousness somehow, in some kind of an experiment, military experiment, has been transplanted into Sean Fentress. And the other thing that's interesting in this movie is that when he goes and he finds himself on this train, that after 8 minutes, the train blows up. The entire train blows up in 8 minutes. I mean, totally explodes, and it just completely, it's a big fiery blast that just engulfs the entire train, blows the whole train up. And then he seems to go into some kind of military setting where he's like, what is happening to me? Who are you? What? Give me some identification. Where am I? What am I? And that's what's so good about the movie is this movie is doing it for all of us. All of us kind of know that consciousness is much beyond what we think it is. I mean, most spiritualities, even today, have trouble coming up with a good definition of consciousness. If you talk to scientists, a lot of scientists who are raised on the scientific method and empiricism, Newtonian physics, science, and the law of science, the laws of science, they will say, well, maybe there's consciousness. It's not until you get to quantum physicists and scientists like Albert Einstein who start to really open up their minds and consider consciousness. Before that, Isaac Newton wasn't talking about consciousness. Everything was empiricism. Everything was you got to see it, smell it, taste it, touch it. There's nothing beyond the empirical material world. Einstein comes along and he's like, I don't know. I think there's more. And the quantum physicists that have continued on from Einstein have gone much deeper into consciousness studies. The other thing that's important is, for years scientists just thought this world happened with the Big Bang so many years ago, but Elon Musk and a lot of modern-day scientists and modern-day thinkers, I would actually say a majority of modern-day scientists, when they're asked, what is this world? They will actually, for the first time, they're starting to say that the world seems like a simulation. And for us, we're going to watch a movie and we get all caught up in the characters and the emotions of the movie, and we can look at a movie and we can say, well, that's obviously a simulation. There's actors, actresses, they're filming different scenes in different places, and it's obviously a simulation. We would say, namaste here, this is the real world, and and the simulation is the movie. But what Jesus is teaching us is that even when we dream at night and have nighttime dreams, those are simulations that are being generated by our unconscious mind and our unconsciousness. Even Sigmund Freud said, dreams are wish fulfillment. And sometimes, have anybody ever gone flying in your dream? That's a wish fulfillment. We can't seem to do much of it on the everyday life, but when we dream at night, sometimes we're up there like Superman. We may not have the cape, but we're flying, we're soaring. So what this movie is going to show is that there are going to be these 8-minute segments they look very real. They feel very real for Captain Coulter when he's in them. And he's being called Sean, and they go for 8 minutes, and then the train blows up. And then he's in some kind of a small container area that's very closed and dark, and there's a TV screen, and he's in contact with some military personnel. And they're pretty much trying to fill him in because he's got a lot of questions. But what they are filling him in with is, this is what's going on. They're going to tell him this is a program called Source Code, and they're going to try to have him use his 8-minute segments to help them find out who planted the bomb, cause and effect in the world, and to try to gain information from him while he's doing this. How does that relate to all of us? Well, if the world is nothing more than what I give it, then our self-concepts as personalities and what we believe and think is literally determining the world that we perceive. That's why Jesus said, I've given everything I see all the meaning it has for me. We may say, well, this wasn't just summit of Trump and Putin, and we may have some strong opinions about that summit and about those characters, but Jesus is saying, your mind gives it the meaning. And the ego made the body, and the ego made the personality self, and the conflicts that you're perceiving in the world between people or countries or between different cultures, whatever you're perceiving as conflict, is just starting with the ego belief in your mind. You're seeing a private world that the ego has peopled, and everything that you perceive is exactly as the ego set it up. That's lesson 152. The power of decision is my own. He says, you may think this is too all-encompassing to be the truth, but the truth has no exceptions. The truth is love. And we're perceiving something that's not love. And he's trying to say, don't blame, don't point the fingers, don't blame the characters, don't blame the environment, don't blame the world. Just come in with me for a purification process, for a questioning of what you believe, and I'll take you in to teach you how to forgive and judge not, as he said in the Sermon on the Mount 2,000 years ago. This movie is so good at that because for most of us, we are seeing a timeline of past, present, and future. A big past, a little blip of a present moment, and a future, a big future. And Jesus is teaching us in the Course that the ego it invented linear time, and it tries to force continuity on past, present, future. It's literally trying to hold on to a projected world of guilt, of fear, of chaos, of fragmentation, of destruction. It's holding on for dear life, but it's this tiny little belief in your mind that has covered itself with a giant cover called the cosmos. And the ego is the Big Bang, so to speak, that the scientists are looking for. The belief in separation from a loving creator is the bang in the mind. And then the projection of all these gases and planets forming and stars is the projection of that tiny mad idea, this crazy belief in separation. Now, when this movie was made, I would say this movie, we actually are going to see what current spirituality is now calling timeline jumping. I was on an interview recently with a woman in Australia, Dakini, and she was saying, can we talk about the topic of timeline jumping? How many people here are familiar with timeline jumping? Okay, and I said, well, Jesus is teaching us that the time is a projection of the ego, and we may believe in reincarnation, where we jump from, like the Buddhist and the Eastern thing, reincarnation, where you kind of jump from one lifetime timeline to the next. And it's called reincarnation, and you have an amnesia most of the time about a previous life. Unless you get a real good past life regression therapist who starts to fill you in on what you were and what you did in previous lives. And there are some people that actually are able to go to the Akashic records and start to look into their future lives as well. And now there's a phenomenon happening around the world where it's called timeline jumping, where people are literally able, without seeming to die and reincarnate, they're able to use the power of their mind to timeline jump to different timelines, because it's not that the past timelines are different from the future timelines. All of the timelines are happening simultaneously. So it's like your mind is more like a remote control, and we know how that goes. If you got all the cable channels and you just decide to go channel hopping. There are people now that are shifting timelines, And what they're doing is they're learning, they're bringing all these skills from one timeline into another. So they go into a timeline, they come over, and lo and behold, they're like a master concert pianist. Uh, Instantly, they've just migrated all of their skills from one timeline to another. Now, here's a movie way before this was popular. This is more of a popular trend. Here's a movie in 2011 where we can see him jumping in and out in consciousness of this train scenario, this 8-minute train scenario. And then, as it goes to the end, he's going to start to take his limits off consciousness. Because they're telling him, no, it's just a computer program. Just a computer program. It's not real. It's just a simulation. All the people in the train have already died. They're dead and gone. You can't save anybody. We just want you to find the bomber, so in the timeline that the military people in, they can try to catch the bomber to prevent a larger bomb blowing up Chicago instead of just the train. But what he's going to do is he's going to start to go deeper into consciousness to start to realize that even if the world is a simulation, it still must be connected to consciousness. I still must have a choice in this. I still must be able to change my mind and choose a different purpose and let the Holy Spirit rearrange consciousness, rearrange everything to show me a happy dream. There has to be a way in the forgiven world, the world that Jesus saw, where he said, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." As he seemed to be a body bleeding on a cross, he says, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." There must be a way in consciousness for us to forgive and to have a happy dream. And this movie is showing us that we do have that power. And the main character, Captain Coulter Stevens, he's going to go through a bunch of disorienting experiences in his mind. But he has a good heart, and he knows he wants to do something that's helpful. He wants to bring a saving quality. He wants to initially save the people on the train. He doesn't even know what's going on, but he wants to help save the people. And he's going to follow the instructions of the military commanders, but actually in the end, for all of us, we can follow the instructions in reading books, but in the end, it comes down to our own mind being responsible for accepting the correction, for forgiving. We're responsible in our mind for letting go of the judgment. Jesus said, you made the ego by believing in it, and you can dispel it by withdrawing your belief from it. That's what authentic spirituality is. It's beginning to expose, raise the ego's darkness into conscious awareness, and then give it over to the light, voluntarily, not as some kind of magical thing, but as oh, I've done this thing and it is this that I would undo. I feel guilty about this, but I want to feel innocence. I give this over to you. Show me another way of looking at this. Show me another way of perceiving the world. Lead me to a highest state of consciousness that I can go to, where I see that I don't have any real problems, just believed that I had problems. Take me to that. So I've been working with A Course in Miracles and with Jesus for the last 39 years. And over the years, I just seem to get happier and happier and happier, with some tremendous dark nights along the way, like, oh my God, what have I taken the lid off here? This is like so dark. But progressively, over the years, I've been more able to tune into inner guidance and just let the Spirit make the decisions with me, with my mind, instead of trying to just hold on to ego decisions. What benefits the personality self? What benefits my immediate surroundings? I'm now more interested in what clears my mind of this fragmented perception And what is a blessing for the whole world? When you think of Jesus, when you think of Ramana Maharshi, when you think of Yogananda, when you think of all the great mystics and saints, they went through a prayerful kind of a transformation during their time on earth, and it was a transformation in mind, in consciousness. So sit back. I think we're dark enough to get into this. We got James is in the back row, and he's giving us thumbs up. He's saying popcorn in hand, and let's go. Let's go for it. So this is the first huge leap in consciousness. Imagine yourself if you looked in the mirror in the morning and you saw somebody else and you raised your hand like that. Imagine how shocking that would be. That would be the beginning of starting to see that you're not who you think you are. And it's very disorienting. Now, I know a lot of people that, I haven't done it, but they say they do ayahuasca experiences and many different experiences, and they do have some of these kind of things during those experiences. And it's the same effect. It's like very, very shocking, like, what is going on? If you saw a different face in the mirror. And actually this is just the beginning step of a journey, and we can learn vicariously through this movie. We don't actually have to do all the ayahuasca and everything, because everything we learn is a lesson for our mind. We can learn it through the movies, through other people. And Jesus even says that in the Course. He says, you can learn from my experiences and you can learn from your brothers. We know how that works when we have these deep spiritual talks. We go, really? Really? You experience that? We learn from each other. We gain a broader perspective of consciousness just from our conversations, open-hearted, transparent conversations, transparent relationships. So we're going to move on now. He's now seeing almost like a quantum, I think this is a quantum love story. I'm going to call this a quantum love story. Those two that we just saw sitting there, the man and the woman, she's calling him Sean, he's going, that's not my name, but they're going to fall in love because the Spirit's going to take the relationship and turn it into a quantum holy relationship. So already we're getting a little bit of the idea of projection, because he's told, go back into the train and find the bomber. And when he first comes back, he's just like so realistic, because he's just seen the scene before. So now he has a little more of a feel that it's a simulation. And it would be the same with us. If we had a scenario and then we got a repeat scenario, we would just go, wow, so realistic. But because we don't get the repeat, then we don't have the comparison that makes it seem like a simulation. Even though most of the scientists and the philosophical thinkers are saying, this cosmos, this world is a simulation, but they don't know what's behind it. They think it's some, like Elon Musk, I think, has said, maybe it's a future evolved society that is using this world and playing with us. You see, they don't have Jesus' explanation. It's a belief. It's a belief in our mind, a hidden belief, the ego. So you can see also how he says, oh, you're the girl, you're the distraction, the pretty girl distraction. He's almost trying to think military, like now it's a military operation. You know, he's going to be in a military. He's not looking at her like a friend or a woman who calls her by a different name. And he's going through, and he's with the comedian, he's very aggressive. He's starting to feel like he has a job to do, a mission. And now he's perceiving the train and everyone in the train through that filter of his mission. And this is what Jesus says we do every day. We wake up and we have certain beliefs of what we want to happen, what we want to accomplish. And he's saying we need to train our mind to open to a new purpose and see the world in a different way. Most of the goals that we have are ego goals. I want better this, better that, better environment, better body, more money, more intelligence. It's we're driven to become better persons. And that's part of the ego's scheme to keep us in the mask of personality instead of knowing our spiritual nature, which is the I am presence prior to the personality. So we've learned a world and a false self, a substitute self, and now we think we're moving forward in time, but actually, Jesus says in the Course, we're actually moving backwards. We're retracing our steps where we made a faulty choice, where we learned an ego goal or an ego skill, and we're becoming more humble as we get closer to the light. We're moving back in time, in our mind, to the I am presence that we really are. And it seems to the human like we're moving forward, like we're always trying to achieve more goals, get more, accomplish more. It's like a rat race, and it's very stressful. I'm just coming across people on like Instagram now who, I've just found a woman on Instagram who, she worked very hard, she built a business, she earned her first $1 million when she was 30, now she's worth $5 million. And then she just started to go, what if this is the matrix? And what if all the work I've just done to become a multi-millionaire and have a 4,000 square foot house is a trick? What if I would rather wake up from the matrix? The matrix came out in 1999. Here she is on Instagram. She's got sparkly eyes, long blonde hair, and she's like going, I think my purpose is to wake up from the matrix and to help others wake up from the matrix. So she rented out her 4,000 square foot house and she lives in a van now. And she's starting to contact people and say, let's all come together and wake up from the matrix together. It's fascinating. But this movie is kind of showing us in consciousness, whatever our predominant beliefs are, we play out these scenarios, and they're simulated scenarios. They're based on our beliefs and our thoughts and our emotions. And it's like our character is like the hero chasing to accumulate or to achieve something. And Jesus is like, whoa, whoa, whoa. God created you perfect. You just have to do like all the mystics and saints said, empty your mind of all the things you've learned on top of your perfection, on top of your spirit, your I am presence. So here we go. You can see he's kind of driven now because he's heard what the military people told him, and he's identified as being Captain Coulter Stevens, Air Force pilot, follow the commanders. He's got many questions. He wants to talk to his dad. He wants to know what's going on, but the Spirit is using this whole train scenario thing to bring him deeper into the light and help him actually start to fall in love with the woman that's across from him, instead of saying, you're just a distraction, you're the pretty woman, you're the distraction. She's like, Sean, are you okay? We're learning, it's quite a journey here into consciousness, but we're learning that he's been with them for 2 months, and he has memories of being a pilot in the Air Force and running sorties, probably in Iran, Iraq, in the Middle East somewhere, and now we're in Afghanistan, and he's on a train, and he's like, how did I get here? And how did I get to be Sean? She says, for all intents and purposes, you're now Sean. And the train exploded and the people were killed. And he's like, I'm here. I'm talking to you. It's very confusing. And this is what happens when the Spirit starts to take our memories and our time, which we believe is very sequential. It's all fits in nice place. We have family trees and we have photo books and albums, and everything we have is very linear. But some of you who maybe have had ayahuasca experiences or whatever, you start to get these memories that come, and time can seem to be very jagged. It doesn't seem to be the way that it is in the dream. It's chopped up. I mean, I just did a movie, was it 2 or 3 weeks ago, called Premonition, and I was using, that's the movie from like 2007, Sandra Bullock, and time is all chopped up. She's trying to figure out what day it is and what happened. Underneath it, we have this ego belief in cause and effect. We believe that the past causes the present, which causes the future. And it's not so. That's how deceived and distorted our minds are. What is true cause and effect? God is the cause, and our true identity as the Christ is the effect. That's why Jesus said, I and the Father are one. He didn't say, I am God. He said, I and the Father are one. God is the creator, and Christ is the creation. But when the mind believes in the ego, cause and effect get split apart, where the cause is forgotten. God is forgotten, because now a lot of people on the planet are just atheists and or agnostics, don't even know if there is a God. God gets completely forgotten like an amnesia, and then the mind believes it has left the mind of God and entered fantasy land, entered Distractionville, entered a world of fragmentation that's so complex, and it's all learned. We've learned it. And everything we think is something, radiation causes cancer, if I eat too much food I'll get fat. I mean, we have thousands, hundreds of thousands of beliefs that cause enormous anxiety in us, in our sleeping mind. Sometimes they go to extremes, to addictions, where we buy the medical model, we buy the false cause and effect, and then we seem to go into extremes and addictions, and we feel like we need help. We're just crying out for help. What Jesus is teaching us is that even our perception of linear time is part of the trap of the ego. And we need miracles. We really need help in this situation. We can't just get to heaven when the body dies, because it's our mind that has the faulty perception. We seem to lose one body and we change the channel. We take up another one and then change the channel. We keep changing the channel. And the Buddhists call this reincarnation in a linear framework, but Jesus is saying you're just trying to invent yourself instead of accepting as God created you as pure spirit. And you keep reinventing yourself and choosing again and again. So here, this is perfect, because he's like saying, who's in charge? I need to speak to the commanding officer. I want to speak to my father. I want to know what's happening. And she's giving very much military commands. Most of us, we could say we grew up in an educational system, in a cultural system, learning our languages and so forth. And it, in some sense, has been kind of like a military education, because we're told what to do to be a good little boy, be a good little girl, grow up to be a good, mature, functioning citizen, contributing member of society and everything. And it's part of a giant scheme of deception. And we can see from him that he's just wondering, what is going on? She's like, concentrate. You need to discipline yourself. Look for somebody who's quiet, the silent type. You know, she's building the suspicions. She's like saying, you be a good military person, and you find the bomber. And he's asking, what's going on? Well, actually the trained people were killed. Already it's over. They've already been killed. He's like, and what am I doing? And you are there to save lives. We've told that to military people. We told that to people growing up. We tell our doctors save lives. We tell our nurses save lives. We tell our military people save lives. But all the mystics and saints have pointed to go within and heal this in your mind. Leave this trick of time and space. I just want to read you a little section from Jesus, because he's got a really good part in here. This one is from Workbook Lesson 158. And he's talking about time. He says, time is a trick, a sleight of hand, a vast illusion in which figures come and go as if by magic. Yet there is a plan behind appearances that does not change. The script is written. When experience will come to end your doubting has been set. For we but see the journey from the point at which it ended, looking back on it, imagining we make it once again, reviewing mentally what has gone by. He's describing our worldly life very much like this train scenario. We keep seeing these scenarios, and our mind is confused. We're saying, okay, what's the lesson? What's the point? Can somebody tell me the point of this world? It's got to be more than grow old, get sick and die. There's got to be more than that. And he's saying, it's a simulation, but the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, can use it for your mind training, to evolve, to discipline your mind, to reach the heights of consciousness and learn true forgiveness. And he's still kind of operating in that military self-concept where he's taking the orders, he's trying to do the best that he can do to follow the orders, but he's got some major questions, like, who am I? What is happening? And what? I'm reliving a train crash that happened in the morning, that it's already over and done. I'm mentally reviewing what has already gone by. And that's what Jesus is teaching us. He's teaching us with our dreams and our daily lives. We have to pay close attention to our emotions, to the beliefs and thoughts that are underneath those emotions. So isn't this sweet? He wants to help her. He wants to save her. He wants to get her off the train. And there's the inklings of our holy relationship, our love that's going to keep growing and expanding, because it starts with that little willingness to help, based on what even if he's been told it's just a simulation, he still is going to, with what he believes in, he wants to get her off the train. And then he also sees this nervous man going into the restroom, and she said, what are we into, racial profiling? Because he said it's a game. But he has this military drive and programming, has to follow the orders, find the bomber, look for somebody who's quiet, who's suspicious. This is what the ego does with us every day. When we get into fearful mode, we can accuse. We can ask questions and put people on the spot. Even though in A Course in Miracles, Jesus says, never correct a brother. Do not question him and do not confound him. Oh my God. Jesus is telling us, never correct a brother? Wait a minute, are you talking about the human condition? Jesus is like, yeah, never correct a brother. Do not question him, do not confound him. He's teaching us how to see our brothers and sisters miraculously, like the Christ mind, seeing them as they truly are. And we can see when we get fearful, then we get suspicious. Then we start questioning people. What are your motives? What were you thinking? And we start analyzing the motives of others, which he also says in the Course, it's dangerous to analyze the motives of others, because you cannot analyze the motives of others without activating your ego, without using your ego. The Spirit is not analyzing the motives of others. The Spirit's like, they're the Christ. Don't be fooled by their body and their behavior. They're the Christ. You should treat them as the Christ, because you're the Christ. And the only way that you'll know that you're the Christ is treat them the Christ, That's what Namaste is about. Namaste, the spirit in me sees the spirit in you, that's what Namaste is all about. So you can see he's had a beautiful inclination to get her off the train. He even has a big, long kiss to get her to come off the train because he wants to save her life. And now he's going to go after the one that he suspects is behind the bombing. This is getting deep now. Because a lot of us have heard about parallel realities. That's been around for a long time. The Seth material, it goes way back, parallel realities. What Jesus is teaching us in the Course, he wouldn't use the word parallel realities. He would say parallel illusions. He would say the sleeping mind has got its remote and it's just click, click, click. It's time jumping all the time. And some people are now even able to use their mind to time jump without the body dying. They can time jump using the mind because they're all happening simultaneously in this sleeping mind, this mind that believes in separation. So what we're starting to see is in this movie they're telling him it's source code, you're just there, the train is already blown up. You thought you saved Christina, no, she's dead. And they're basically telling him that you're dealing with something that doesn't deal with their parallel reality, with what's going on for them. They're just trying to have him extract information so they can find out where the bomber is in Chicago, what's going on in their timeline. But you can see how the underlying belief is that these seeming timelines have no connection. And that's not what quantum physics, that's not what Einstein is telling us, that's not what Jesus is telling us. It's all connected in mind. Everything that we're thinking, feeling, and believing is being projected. So you might say, if we have, let's say, 8.4 billion people on the planet, that no two people see the same world, because everyone's seeing a different version of the ego. You see how sneaky the ego is? It's projecting out a world that he says the ego peopled the world. He's saying that when we're perceiving people and things and images in our world, we're perceiving our own private world with private thoughts and private minds, and this is a product, a projection of the ego belief. But the variation, the ego projects out so many different forms so that each person seems to have their own private dream. And that's why intimacy and connection is so hard in this world, because, as they say, no two people see the same world. We can admit there seems to be a lot of commonalities. We could say, well, we've got a group of, let's say, 20-some here, we're here at Namaste, it's in Ahihik, the day started out cloudy, but it became sunny. We can have a story where we say, well, this afternoon the sun came out and the sky was blue and there's some clouds. Like, we can agree, but Jesus is saying, oh, you don't even know how deep the distortion goes. You will, when you wake up to heaven, you'll see what agreement is. You'll see what oneness is. You'll see what reality is. It has nothing to do with these projected, peopled worlds that are private. And that's why I sometimes say, even, we have concepts in the world like soulmate. Isn't that a lovely concept, soulmate? Everyone seems to be searching for the soulmate, right? That's a key thing. I'll move to Mexico, go to Namaste, I'll find my soulmate. And even if you find somebody where you seem to have like 99% agreement, you always come to that day when you're having a conversation and you're smiling and you go, what did you say? You see, this is because it's a setup. We want harmony. We want connection. We want trust. We want to feel love. We want love. And yet, even with our attempt at finding a soulmate, the people are just reflections of our mind, of our thoughts in our mind. So as long as we hold on to the ego, guess what's going to creep in? Even when we get a pretty happy life going, so-and-so died, so-and-so had a heart attack, so-and-so went missing. It's generated to be a trap to keep us from knowing who we are. It's generated, it's a projection to keep us from knowing our spiritual reality. But the good news is, there's an escape. And Jesus says, you're not responsible for the error, but you are responsible for accepting the correction. Isn't that loving? We're not responsible for the error. But as long as we have the ego unconscious, we seem to say and do things that we are not proud of, that we feel like, well, we messed up. Sorry, I messed up. It's just this unconscious ego belief system coming up, the fear. When the fear takes hold of us, when the guilt takes hold of us, we need to learn how to choose miracles, how to choose the escape, how to choose the freedom, how to choose the release. And that's the great thing about what we can do. That's what the point of every movie. I've showed thousands and thousands of movies in 44 different countries, developed a whole site, Movie Watcher's Guide to Enlightenment, where this movie's in there, along with hundreds of other ones, but it's all for the one purpose, like we can find the escape hatch, we can find the correction. We've had enough experiences of the miracles in our life. You wouldn't be here at Namaste if you didn't have miracles. And what this is like saying, yes, yes, yes. Jesus is like, keep coming to me. And you can see he's being sent back in again, but he's slowly starting to get some answers, but he's not completely in harmony with the answers. He said, no, I saved her. I took her off the train. They're saying, no, you didn't. She died. So you can see there's still a dissonance. He's like saying, no, I have a mind. I have a powerful mind. I gave my best shot. I got her off the train. And they're like, no. And you can see we have to go past the limits of belief that try to teach us that separate timelines exist and that separate realities exist. When the Spirit's trying to teach us reality is one, God created reality. Even New Age teachings, even some of you have heard of the book The Secret, the movie The Secret, and probably you've heard the New Age teachings, you create your own reality. That seems to be mixed into the Course, but I always go around the world and I say, no, Jesus is saying God is the creator of reality, and the most you can ever do is accept reality exactly as it is. The whole world is the projection of the belief that you can create your own reality. Use the power of your mind to make up an identity. It's called the authority problem. I can author myself. I can make myself any size, shape, culture, any skin color, any language. It's like it's like Russian roulette, just playing around with changing the channel over and over and over, trying to invent ourselves when God created us perfect. God created us as pure spirit. So these kind of movies really start to bring it home, because he's starting to get a little bit clearer idea of consciousness and a little bit clearer idea of the power of his mind and the power of his thoughts. Yeah, he said at the beginning, I want to talk to my dad. He says to her, what would you do if you just had 1 minute to live? She says, I don't know. He said, I would call my dad. I would listen to his voice. And I would tell him, I'm sorry. That's deep. He's talking about his biological dad that he probably had a grievance with. If he had 1 minute to live, he would call his dad, he would listen to his voice, he would tell him sorry. But metaphysically, we're talking about the Creator. We're talking about what we would do in our last minute. I would make contact with my Creator. I would listen to his voice, and I would tell him I'm sorry. I would admit to my mistake of wanting something more than heaven, of wanting something more than eternity, of wanting to be the author of myself, of being separate, inventing myself instead of accepting myself as I was created. So this movie is, I was saying, if you had one movie, if you were on a deserted island in Nicaragua and you had one last request, like to get prisoners, oh, this one's going a home run. This is a Babe Ruth home run. We are now getting into the depth of forgiveness. He has this thing where he's been told he's been with them for 3 months. He doesn't understand. 1 minute he's flying sorties in Afghanistan. The next minute he's on a train. They said, "You've been here for 2 months," and then he asked Rutledge, "Hey, are you in charge here? Did you invent this?" "Yes, I did." And he tells him all about source code and quantum and all these different things, basically saying when someone's dead, then you have an afterglow of 8 minutes, almost like I'm using your brain for my purposes, my military purposes. And he's kind of foreshadowing that this soldier is dead, and that he's using his brain and his source code, his invention, to try to save lives in a different timeline. You see how disoriented that is, because he's like saying, I'm doing what I can do here to be helpful, and you're telling me that everything I'm doing makes no difference whatsoever, and all my efforts make no difference because in your timeline there's something else going on, and the timelines aren't connected. That's not what Einstein told us, and that's not what all of the quantum physicists since the 1900s, the turn of the century, have told us. The quantum field, everything is connected. Consciousness is connected. Jesus says in the workbook of A Course in Miracles, everything I think, say, and do teaches all the universe. That's how connected we are. That's how powerful our mind is. Everything we think, say, and do teaches the whole universe. And the universe is a reflection of our thoughts, our beliefs, our emotions. People ask me, how does this all work? And I say, well, what you perceive is based on your predominant internal emotions. If your internal state of mind is basically happy, you will start to see a happy world. It has to reflect your predominant emotions and state of mind. But what influences your emotions? Your thoughts. And what is underneath your thoughts but your beliefs? Whatever you're perceiving in this world, you could say, I'm seeing the world today this way because I believe it is this way, and only because I believe it is this way. If I think the world is going down the drain, it's because I believe the world is going down the drain. And if I'm more like, someone who's extremely optimistic, or just has such an optimistic view, then they do see, perceive a different world. And then, why do I believe the world is this way? Jesus says, it's because you want it to be this way. The prayer of your heart, the desire of your heart, sets everything in motion. What you want to see, what you want to perceive, you will perceive. And when you want only love, he says, you will see nothing else. That's amazing. Want only love, I will see nothing else. So he's asking for access for a phone, because I think this is actually the point where, even though he's been told it's a simulation, even though he's been told it doesn't have any effect on the other timeline, he still believes in his heart that what he is wanting to do and trying to do makes a difference. He is not buying into the military story that what you think and do has no effect on anything. We can see some memories of Afghanistan. Wow, that's a big one. Coulter Stevens is dead. So you're aware that there's something called consciousness. You're aware that you're still seemingly thinking and feeling and even following instructions, but now it comes in, Captain Coulter Stevens, in the strangest way possible. He never thought that she would go and bring this back to him. And I just recently, was it a couple weeks ago, showed the movie Solaris with George Clooney. And at the end of that movie, that's a movie about complete forgiveness, where the main character, his wife, Rhea, commits suicide. He goes off to this distant planet of light, and she appears, and then he sends her away, and she reappears again. And he plays all this stuff out, showing that it's all in the mind, only to have her appear to him back on Earth at the end of the movie saying, when he says, "Am I alive? Am I dead?" And she smiles and says, "We don't have to think like that anymore. Everything is forgiven. Everything." That's the movie I said for many years. If you just were on a desert island, you knew you were going to die, but you wanted to just make contact with eternal life, that's the movie, because we do think in terms of life and death. We think about it every day. We think about life and death. That's what the survival game is about. We believe that we have a band of time between birth and death to spend, like a currency, any way that we want to with our identity, our human identity. We're like, you know how people say, "I want to spend some time with you." Literally, like spending time like a currency. But what Jesus is teaching us is he's teaching us that birth as you believe it is, of the body, and death of the body, is not actually what they seem to be. Death is not what you think it is. What? And then he explains it to us in his Course in Miracles in lesson 163 and 167. He goes into great detail. And he says, he's teaching us it's all psychological. He says, any feeling that you have that is not supremely happy is death. A little worldly pain, a little worldly pleasure, and even a little sigh of weariness is death. In heaven there's no sigh of weariness. We don't get tired in spirit. He's just telling us that the belief in the ego is the death. And therefore we don't reach heaven by dying, even though we have R.I.P., rest in peace. Wouldn't it be so nice? As people think that sometimes when they want to try to commit suicide, like, I'm going to put myself out of my misery. But the mind is very powerful, and death is no escape. It's forgiveness. We reach life, through forgiveness. We reach joy through joy. We reach happiness through happiness. We reach peace through peace. That's why we're so focused on peace, on inner peace now, because we know that goes with us. It carries way beyond the body, our state of mind. And all the yogis and mystics throughout the centuries have showed us that high enlightened state. James was giving me a beautiful tour here, and he said, this is the largest painting or photo of Yogananda in the world. And wasn't Yogananda a great example of that? Because even the people around him, he said, I'm not going to be here much longer. They knew when he was giving his speech that was it. You've seen that movie, Awake. And then his body laid in a state of non-decay for weeks and weeks and weeks. It was almost like his spirit was smiling, just leaving a little symbol behind for the world. Like, purify your heart and love God, and look, and even the body did not decay. Some of you might have heard of Fatima, with the children who saw Mother Mary. There was two little girls. Was it Lucinda? Lucia, one of those. She was the little one, and the same thing happened to her body back after she passed away from seemingly the plague, or it was a virus. Her little body, who saw Mother Mary back in Fatima, just like Yogananda's, did not decay. She was the one in the movie that they tried to tell her, you're making it up, you didn't see Mother Mary, you're lying. They did, the priest, everybody tried to, this little girl, she said, I saw her. She would not budge from what she saw. She saw Mother Mary, and there's not a human being in the whole world that could convince her otherwise. They were saying, just say you made it up. Don't rock the boat here. But these are like symbols for our mind of the devotion. That's what inspires us to, like Jesus said, blessed are the pure of heart, for they shall see God. That's what inspires us to purity. It inspires us to devotion. It inspires us to remember heaven, the kingdom of heaven within. So he's now just becoming aware that the identity that he seems to be, I think Morpheus in the Matrix calls it your residual digital identity. That's an interesting term for the projection. And now he's just being told, Captain Coulter Stevens is dead. So now his mind is getting more cracked open. He is ready for some big experiences now, because he's had a direct confirmation that he's not who he thinks he is. And the curiosity now, the expansion of consciousness that comes when we just let go of thinking we're this slab of flesh, and we're curious like a child. What am I then? Show me what I am. Ooh, that's exciting. You see the expansion just when he comes to the idea that I'm imagining this consciousness. That's what happens when we read the Course and we just take in what Jesus is saying, Mind reaches to itself. It does not go out. Within itself is everything. You within it, and it within you. You start to read the words. You listen to some of Christopher's songs. You can start to feel we're not limited by time. We're just, our mind is only limited by what it believes. That's it. We're not limited by the body. We're not limited by time. And if our desire is for God and it's strong, ego has nothing that can do to stop us from remembering our true identity. Because our mind is that powerful. So they always told me when I was growing up, be careful what you pray for, David, because prayers are answered. Now I'm starting to feel that in a deeper way. Oh, that's what they were telling me. Be careful what you pray for. Be careful what you want, because you'll seem to get it. The law of giving and receiving, it's the same. Whatever I ask for, I will receive. I am responsible for what I see. I choose the feelings I experience, and I decide upon the goal I would achieve. And everything that seems to happen to me, I ask for and receive as I have asked. Wow. You can see him, he's in there. His little capsule is not a tiny capsule anymore. He's just laying back as the capsule expands, because it's just a projection of his mind. He's taking the limits off of his mind. So it just shows us how powerful our mind is, how powerful our mind is. So here we go. These are the big teachings from Jesus. Remember I said earlier, seek not to change the world, seek rather to change your mind about the world. All of these instructions on the train were all about seemingly another timeline and saving the people, saving the city of Chicago, and so on and so forth. And yet, in this scenario, they're both laying their shot, and he's saying to Christina, it isn't over. It doesn't end here. And this is what this movie is here to teach us, is that when we believe in the ego, we believe in a projected world, and we believe that the problems are in the world. The terrorism, the crazy politics, deportations, tens, hundreds of thousands of people being deported, disease, cancer, heart disease, tsunamis, plagues, tornadoes, hurricanes, on, including all the myriad of ways that the body can seem to suffer and die. And Jesus is using this movie to teach us that this is just a projection of mind. This is what the ego made of our powerful mind. We believed in a puff of nothingness, the most incredible belief ever, the belief that we could separate from a loving Creator, from a loving God, and then with that powerful mind of the Christ mind, giving it to a puff of nothingness, Jesus says, into eternity where all is one, there crept a tiny, mad idea at which the Son of God remembered not to laugh. That this idea is so incredible, so unbelievable that it's laughable. And I remember I was using that phrase from the Course doing a gathering probably 15, 20 years ago in Wisconsin, and the man there he started going, crept, crept, crept. Like he was picking up on that one word, like the pain of taking seriously an incredible belief, an unbelievable belief. And that's actually what all of our mind training and forgiveness practices is just to be able to join with Jesus, to join with the Holy Spirit, and see how incredible it is. He's saying, the more you look at the ego, the less you see of it, meaning the more you expose it from the unconscious mind, the less you see it witnessed to in the world. And he's actually teaching us that it is an unbelievable belief, but you have to see it. If it's hidden, is pushed in the unconscious mind, it seems to project the world. The characters all seem to be robots acting out the belief in separation. But when you see it, then you see the impossibility of it. Like I was sharing, Jesus says, you're not responsible for the error, but you are responsible for accepting the correction. And then he says that it's for the miracle worker and the teacher of God, it's the only responsibility you have. It's the sole responsibility. In this world, think of all the guilt that is generated from these roles. Was I a good enough mother? Was I a good enough father? Was I a good enough son and daughter? Was I good enough Course in Miracles student? I mean, you could fill in the blank. You see, the ego generates the roles, and then it keeps telling the mind, you're not enough. You're not good enough. And that's the categorizing mechanism of the mind that generates the guilt. And non-judgment, of course, is the answer when we realize the categories aren't real. Competition is not real. Comparison is not real. All of the specific little concepts that the ego made up to try to assemble a false identity, none of them have any reality, and that's why we're just asked in lesson 189 of the workbook, simply do this, be still, lay aside all thoughts of what you are, what God is, all concepts you learned about the world. Empty your mind of everything it thinks is good or bad or right or wrong. Every idea that you've ever learned from anything. Forget this world, forget this course, and come with holy empty hands unto your God. It's just such a deep prayer that all the mystics and saints have shared for many centuries. Just empty your mind. That's our responsibility. We're not responsible for trying to make the world a better place. We're responsible for emptying our mind of the belief system and the concepts that generate this world. And you can see it in here is, he really has a connection there with Christina. I love the name, Christina. It has Christ right in the name, Christina. And he has that connection, and he still keeps wanting to connect with her, and he says it's not over. Because deep down, he doesn't believe that everything that he seems to be and seems to be doing, even though they're telling him he's dead, he still has faith in love. He still has the care. He still has that deep desire, and that Jesus knows it's in our heart. It can't be put out. It can't be extinguished by the ego. So here we go. We get to see Captain Coulter, or whatever he seems to be, our mind start to realize that we cannot be limited. We cannot be stopped by false beliefs, whatever they are. Wow, the power of our thoughts. Yeah, we can't deny it anymore. It's just so evident. Well, I hope you were as moved by that as I was. It's just so good to remember how powerful our minds are, and we can we can watch our thoughts and question our beliefs. Yeah. Never stop questioning beliefs until there's no need anymore. Yeah. Well, thank you. That's our show for tonight.